That's right. So if you think about user acquisition very specifically, there's three different ways the IDFA has been used in a very, very effective manner. Number one is identity, or it's shorthand for targeting, right? Number two is just efficiency. How do you ensure that you're not wasting impression? For example, frequency capping, right? It's an efficiency technology. It relies entirely on IDFA today. And the third one is attribution. So it's identity, efficiency, and attribution. Let's dive into each of those, right? Identity is really core to identity, and targeting is really core to user acquisition. It just absolutely is very, very core to user acquisition. A lot of user acquisition runs on top of what is either a lookalike target, a lookalike segment, or something akin to a lookalike segment, right? And a lot of it is built on top of lookalike segments. So a lot of them are built on top of attributes, user attributes, right? Users in a certain location with a certain type of handset using a certain class of applications. The future looks like it will be limited, but not broken version of targeting and identity. The IDFA in many ways was a shorthand for 20 different features put together, right? IDFA X was shorthand to say users in a location, say California or San Francisco Bay Area with an iPhone 11, using more than 10 casual gaming applications. I'm making this up to some extent. Not every company has this level of data, but you would target users with those attributes, and the shorthand for that for all systems was IDFA. But that is not to say you can't still target those attributes, right? Those attributes may still be available. Users allowing location tracking in the past may still allow so. Users that install a bunch of applications and allow to be identified by those applications, that may still be possible, right? Users that use a certain handset, we will still likely know what handset it is. Users on a certain telco network, we will still know what the telco network is. So some of this is affected and some of this is not, right? For example, the app ownership example that I was giving about having a number of apps, you may not be able to identify that user very effectively unless the IDFA is available across the board, right? You may see that user on 5 different applications because they've allowed IDFA access, but you may not on the 6th app that you're trying to target. And so there is an impact there. But location, handset, telco, less so. And so what we think is that ad tech companies and identity players in between will, try to build more sophisticated signals to understand users. And even if IDFA is not available, there will be some way to target those users based on attributes, even if not as effective as a single identifier. So that's conclusion on identity, right? So identity for UA, we do think like there's a way to get to 70-80% as good without the IDFA. The second part is all about efficiency. Frequency caps, ad rotation, dynamic creative optimization, just a bunch of different ad tech toolkits really depend on the identity today. They will evolve not to depend on identity. That's as simple as that. They will evolve not to depend on a persistent identifier, right? Mm-hmm. An example of that is a user with a certain set of attributes, let's say that you want a frequency cap. You would apply a frequency cap using some kind of fleeting identifier that only lives for one session of the application. It never leaves the device. You don't have to know more about the user, but you could envision a piece of technology that just knows a user in session and is able to control the frequency cap on that basis. Again, making it up, this technology doesn't necessarily exist today, but there is a way to frequency cap without a persistent identifier, although you know that it's never going to be as good as actually capping frequency of ads on a single user. Identified user. Similarly, for ad rotation, dynamic creative optimization, you will just move away from thinking of the IDFA as the primary, maybe method around which these technologies are built, and you would use a secondary method to do so. That is not a deterministic persistent identifier like the IDFA. Again, it's never going to go to as efficient as a single identifier, but at the same time, you could get to a decent place with new technology and new products put into place. The third part is attribution, which is where a lot changes, right? And that is where I think we've touched upon it a fair bit earlier on this conversation as well, which is what happens if attribution if a customer just moves over to SCAD network? What happens if they stay with their MMP but decide to also use SCAD network? I think that is where a lot of work needs to happen, and a lot of scenarios will need to be worked upon. And I think that is where advertisers with their partners, DSPs, ad networks, and MMPs basically would have to play really well together and play tightly and build the right kind of technology and pipes for the coming months so that the attribution, is as it was before as much as possible. Because attribution is really a cornerstone of all performance advertising. So I think it becomes very important to solve. So that's a very long way to say, look, identity impacted, but manageable. Efficiency impacted, possibly manageable with new technology. Attribution impacted and will need a significant amount of work. And attribution will be the focus of all efforts over the next, or significant amount of efforts over the next 3 to 6 months across the ecosystem. This is the most important problem everyone's solving right now.